Hi learners! In today's video we are going to continue learning about the reported speech structures, but this time we are going to report questions. To report questions, there are some transformations that need to be done. For this, we are going to follow the same diagram we saw in the previous reported speech video. If you don't get this diagram, I recommend you to go to the reported speech video in which you will find a deeper explanation of it. You can find it right here. When we report questions, we must be very careful, because reporting a question does not mean that we want to ask a question. We just want to communicate what somebody else asked. That is why we are not going to use interrogative structures. First, we are going to divide the direct questions into open and closed. Open questions are all those interrogative sentences that start with a WH question word. For instance, what, where, who, how, etc. On the other hand, we have closed questions, which are interrogative sentences that start directly with the auxiliary verb. In this lesson, I am going to use some famous movie questions to give you some examples. The first question is:
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
what is your favorite scary movie? That was an open question, because it starts with a WH question word. When we report open questions, we need to apply the same WH question word used in the direct speech. And of course, change the tense. Let's listen to the question again.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
The question was in simple present. That means that in the reported speech, we will need to have a simple past structure. That is how we have: the killer asked Casey what her favorite scary movie was. When we report an interrogative sentence, we must be careful, because you don't want to ask a question again. So the structure of the question must be changed. That is why we have the verb to be after the subject, in order to eliminate the interrogative structure. Let's take another example.
It's that simple. Are we clear?
Are we clear? In this case, we have a closed question, since it starts directly with the auxiliary verb. Whenever we have a closed question, in the reported speech, we will need to use the conjunction if. That is how in the reported speech we have: Colonel Ethan asked him if they were clear. Notice how the position of the verb to be changes in order to have a statement. In the direct speech, we have the verb to be before the subject, while in the reported speech, the verb to be is located after the subject.
What does Marcellus Wallace look like?
What does Marcellus Wallace look like? In this sentence, we do not have the verb to be, but we have the auxiliary verb does, which tells us that the sentence is in present. That means that in the reported speech, we will need to have a sentence in past. We can also see that it is an open question, since it has a WH question word. So we will use the same WH question word in the reported speech. Jules asked what Marcellus Wallace looked like.
Did you miss me?
Did you miss me? Unlike the other examples, we can notice that this question is in simple past, because it has the auxiliary verb did. That is why in the reported speech, we will need to apply the past perfect structure. We can also notice that it is a closed question. Therefore, the conjunction if is going to be necessary. The mask asked them if they had missed him. A very common mistake is the following: the mask asked them if had they missed him. Remember that we do not want to ask a question. We just want to report what somebody else asked. So the auxiliary verb in the reported speech will never be before the subject. And the last question we are going to report is:
When will I see you again, Michael?
when will I see you again, Michael? In this question, as you may have noticed, we have the auxiliary verb will, which means that the reported speech will need to have the auxiliary verb would. As a result, we have: she asked Michael when she would see him again. I hope I helped you with the reported speech structures. If you have questions or suggestions, feel free to comment and subscribe.